Hey guys, in this video we're going to take a look at programming arguments. Now programming arguments are something that gets used quite often in the real world, and this is something quite useful in a practical sense. Let me show you an example. We've talked about how Python scripts are similar to running commands from a command prompt, and one of the ones I showed you was IP configuration, which gives you information about your network connection. So it's really handy when you're troubleshooting what's going on with your network. Well, IP configuration has options, and you can access those options by putting in arguments. So here's a question mark argument, gives you the help. That's pretty typical. All will give you more detailed information. Renew will renew all your adapters. Sometimes what will happen is that if you call up tech support, they'll ask you to renew everything. Basically flushes out the network settings and reconfigures them. So these settings are nice to have, and these arguments allow you to control the way your program runs. Well, in Python we can do the same thing. We just have to pass over these programming arguments, and that's what this video is talking about. So the way we've been doing programming for the most part is we go through and ask the user for input. We then go ahead, once we collect the user's input, we pause it. Once we collect the user input, we process it and do something with it. While we're doing that, we have to wait for the user to input something, and then we go through and display on the screen. And the argument situation, we actually don't pause for the user's input. We actually ask them to input it when they run the script. So to do this, we're going to access Python's system module. Python's system module has advanced features, so we're going to add to our program, and we add that module by importing it using the import command. That goes at the top. It forces Python to use the system code module. Later on we'll learn how to make our own code modules. But for right now we're going to use a built-in one called system, or sys. And inside of there you can get access to this argument value collection of data. And the argument value of 1 would collect whatever somebody inputted into the program. So it would look something like this. You have a script called argument demo, and then after you put in the name of the file you want to run, you put a space, and then you put in whatever argument you want. When I hit enter, in this case, all it does is pick up that first argument value, put it in a string variable, and print it out. It prints it out like right here. Now if you're using Windows and it hasn't been mapped correctly, you'll need to go through and put in the Python exe and then the name of the argument demo py file or whatever we're testing. And the best thing for me to do is just kind of show you this. So let me open up PyScripter and make some code. So first of all, I'm going to import the system module, and then I'm going to make a variable that's going to pick up the data from system.argumentValues, and I'll pick up the first item in that. And let's see, I think that's all I need for this part. Yep, that's it. And now I just want to do something with it. Okay, I think those 3 lines should do it. So let me save my work. This is test PY and it's under module 3 project, so I want to make sure I know where it's at. Let's see, save. Come on now. I'll run it. It will come back with an index out of error, but it will have at least saved my work. So okay, so now that it's saved, I can go and let's see here. Copy the path. So I'm clicking on the tab and I'm copying the path. I'll come back over here to my command window, and I open that command window by going through and typing in CMD. Oops. CMD. And I'll put in Python C, and then I'll right click. I tried Control V, that didn't work. Right click and paste it in. Okay, so if I run this, it says the index is out of range. It's the same error message I got earlier, and it's because it looks for a argument and there is none. I'm going to hit the up arrow, and this time I'm going to pass in an argument. I'll put a pass in a 2, and you can see the argument was 2, or pass in a string. And you can see that it picked up the quotes with or without the quotes. It figured that it was a string. So that's how you can pass an argument in. And in real life, what you would do is you would actually go through and pass in some values. You can pass in more than one. You just put a space and you put in the next one. You can pass in multiple arguments and then have your program do things with it. Now in PyCharm, they figured that testing it from the command window would be somewhat tedious, so they gave us a feature which is kind of cool. If you go to Run and Edit Configurations, you can see an area here where they say Script Parameters. Now the word parameters and the word argument are interchangeable for some people. They're not truly interchangeable. Parameters are associated with a particular function, and arguments are what go into the parameters. But it gets confused so often, you just have to live with it. So script arguments would be the official thing. Script parameter is good enough. So now when I go ahead and run this time it prints out my argument. Edit configurations, put a space. And I'll change this from 1 to 2. And you can see it picks up the second one. So this is a convenience factor. In real life, people wouldn't be using, the PyCharm other than for editing, creating the script. They would be running it from over here. But when they did, they'd be able to pick up the arguments being passed in. And we know that we can use batch files to launch the script. So in the batch file, you'd put in the name of your script that you want to run and any arguments that would go along with it. And then it would perform whatever action you wanted based on those arguments. The argument values is built in, and it's part of the system module. The 0th element of the collection of values. This is a collection of values. The 0th element is the path on to the file, or the script name. If you're on a Mac, it'll just give you the script name. If you're on a PC, it'll also give you the path. Then after that, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 to the nth degree, as many as you want. And like I said, you can pass some more parameters in. You just use a space separation. One thing that people do is they check to make sure that somebody passed in at least something by checking to see if the length of the argument's values is equal to 0. If it is, then that means that nobody has, passed in a value at this point. Of course, 0 might not be what I want to have in mind. Let's see how I go through and check to see if they've at least passed in something that's going to be at least 2. So let me come back over here and I'll add that code. Before I even try to pick up and display the data, I'll check to see if the length of system.argument value is greater than, let's try 1. If it is, I just hit tab, then go ahead and do some processing. Let's see, what kind of error message you got here? Unorbital list, integer. That's interesting. Got it. Okay, so it goes ahead and prints because the argument values are less or greater than 1. In fact, we can even print out the argument value and find out how many there are. There are 3. And if you remember right, we put in 1 and 2, but there's also the implied path, which would be the third one. If I take these out, nothing gets printed because it didn't match that, it didn't evaluate to true. So now I'll just go ahead and put a friendly error message. And that may be better. A friendly error message like that may be better than the standard one you get. Oops. Which looks like this. So sometimes you protect the user from seeing technical error messages by just doing some conditional testing and deciding whether or not it passes the test. If it does, then perform the action. If not, go ahead and give them some kind of pointers of what they can do to fix the problem. So that would be an example of how you would use this. In my case, let's say I'm going to go ahead and take some numbers and add them together. So, or in this case, looks like I'm going to go ahead and take some numbers, add them together, convert it to a string. So I pick up a number from the first argument value, one from the second argument value, convert it to an integer, and then go through and add them up, and then print out the sum of those two numbers. If for some reason they don't give me enough numbers to work with, I print out script requires 2 arguments to run, and I go ahead and give them an example. So, it's really quite handy to have arguments, and we're going to certainly use them going forward in our class. First thing we're going to do is we're going to try a little lab, and I'll see you in that video, in which case we're going to use script arguments and kind of get a feel for how they would work. I'll see you then.